Welcome back to our series on the 5 steps for reading success. If you have been following along with these episodes and this information, you're probably wondering, why is there another video? We've already done all 5 steps. You are correct. If you have been listening as I've been releasing these episodes, we already talked about oral language, step number 1, phonological and phonemic awareness, which is step number 2, letter knowledge, all about the alphabetic principle, which is step number 3, blending and segmenting, which is just a simple way of saying reading and writing, which is step number 4, and heart words, which was step number 5. So why is there another video in this series? Well, actually, I snuck in another step for reading success on the side of our triangle, and that is handwriting. So we are actually going to talk all about handwriting today. In case you're new here, my name is Erin. I'm from littleslovelearning.com. I'm a former classroom teacher, and now I spend my time supporting parents and helping them teach their kids to read at home. I know what a big and overwhelming task teaching reading can feel like, but I really want to simplify it for you. You don't need a degree in education. You don't need a background as a teacher to teach your child to read. It's actually very simple once we break it down into these 5 steps and our bonus step of handwriting. So if you haven't yet, make sure you download this freebie, the 5 steps for reading success. You can see all of the steps we've already covered in this series: oral language, phonological and phonemic awareness, letter knowledge, blending and segmenting, and heart words. So today, let's talk about this bonus step that I included on the side of our triangle, handwriting. Even though you might not think of handwriting when you think of teaching your child to read, it's actually a super important component. We have research that shows when kids are able to form their letters correctly and when they have that automaticity and that fluency with their letter formation, it can actually support them remembering the names and the sounds of the letters. There is something about that putting pencil to paper, that motion of making our letters with our hands that triggers to our brain the name of the letter, the sound of the letter, and we are able to remember it so much better. So handwriting really goes along with everything we're talking about in terms of teaching our kids to read. Now, as a teacher, I know how difficult it is to teach handwriting in a whole group setting. So most teachers have 20, 25, even upwards of 30 students in their class. They might be the only adult in the room, and they're supposed to monitor all of the students, all of the letters that they're forming, and make sure that they're forming them correctly. It's just not possible. It's not humanly possible for one teacher to monitor all of those students to make sure they're forming their letters correctly. Even if the teacher is showing the class how to form the letter and maybe going around and trying to make sure they're doing it correctly, those kids are writing those letters all the time, and if they have the muscle memory of forming their letters incorrectly, or they don't even know how to form them, so they're forming them a different way every time, which we call drawing letters, that is just going to create these habits that are so much harder to break, and it's much more difficult for them to get their ideas out on paper once they're in the stage of writing sentences and writing stories. We don't want them to have to be thinking about their handwriting. We want it to be automatic and fluent, and that's what we're going to do at home. I am going to support you and help you to teach your child to have proper handwriting at home because it is so much better for them than if they're trying to learn in a class of 20, 25, or 30 students. It's just not possible for that teacher. So if you can support them at home, it's going to be so much better for them. Now, before we even put a pencil in our child's hands, let's back up. We want to make sure that we are developing their fine motor skills and their gross motor skills, and that is going to support their handwriting development. So fine motor skills you're probably familiar with. Those are the muscles in our wrists, our fingers, our hands, all of these small muscles that are going to help us with our writing. So we want to make sure we're helping our kids develop those skills by having them play with things like Play-Doh or Legos, having them draw and color, use spray bottles, making sure they're playing with beads and putting beads on string or yarn. Anything that includes using those small muscles, that's going to help strengthen their fine motor skills. And what we're seeing is a lot of kids are struggling with that nowadays. It could be the introduction of a lot of technology and tablets. It could be a lot of things, but we just know that kids are not doing what they used to do, using their hands as much, and we need to make sure that we are working on developing those muscles. Now, the other type of skills, the gross motor skills, those are the bigger muscles. So we actually need our kids to have a strong core, so those tummy muscles, in order to have proper handwriting and in order to have nice handwriting. So if your child is outside and they're climbing on the jungle gym, or they're skipping, running, hopping, using their whole body, that is actually helping to support their handwriting development, which is so interesting because most people would not assume that those big muscle motor movements are going to help with handwriting, which is such a small task, but actually they do. So as we're supporting our kids to develop those fine motor skills and those gross motor skills, we don't want to put a pencil in their hand too early. And we don't want to expect that they're going to be able to write letters right away because there's actually a progression of development when it comes to their handwriting. So if we look at the line development, when they are about 2 years old, they're going to be able to hopefully draw that vertical line, that up and down line. That's going to be the basis for a lot of letters. And then of course at 2.5, they're going to be doing the side to side line, the horizontal line. At 3, we're hoping that they're working on the circle motion. And for circles, it's really important for handwriting that they're starting at the top, I call it 2 o'clock, and they're going backwards around the clock. That's going to help them form so many letters correctly and more easily by starting up at what I call 2 o'clock. And then the cross shape is at 3.5, and that's really tricky, getting those lines to line up and crossing them in the middle. So this, you can see, it's getting more difficult. Then at 4 years old, we have that square shape. And at 4.5, the diagonals. And if we think about a letter like uppercase A, which includes diagonal lines, if your child is not able to produce diagonal lines, they're going to have a really hard time forming that uppercase A. So now you can see maybe why your child is struggling with that. So diagonal lines at 4.5, and then that X shape doesn't come until 5. So even the letter X is going to be tricky for a lot of kids to write before they're in kindergarten. And we have the triangle shape at 5 as well. So this pre-writing line development really shows how it goes from simple lines to more complex lines. And we can see how all of the letters of the alphabet are based on these lines. So we can't rush our kids into writing too soon or expecting them to write the letters of the alphabet so soon. We really want to take a step back and make sure that their fine motor skills are developed, their gross motor skills, and that they are going through this progression and that we're not rushing them through it. I have an entire blog post dedicated to handwriting and why we teach handwriting the way that we do. I'm going to link that down below so you can check it out. A couple of key components of that blog post. One, I talk about using small tools for small hands. So for handwriting, we really want to make sure that our little ones are using these small pencils. They're called golf pencils. You can get these with the erasers off of Amazon. They're really inexpensive. These small pencils are going to be so much better for our kids than using a regular long pencil or even using those thick pencils, which we don't want to do. We also want to make sure that when we are ready to introduce letters to our little ones, that we are starting with the uppercase letters and not lowercase, because uppercase are much easier to form and they use a lot of those shapes that we looked at in the pre-writing line development. And so they now, as they've mastered some of these lines and some of these X's and T's, they're going to be able to make the uppercase letters so much more easily. And they're also less sophisticated pencil strokes, and they all start at the top. With lowercase letters, some of them are skyline letters, that's what I call them, at the top, but some of them start in the middle, which is what we call the plane line, the airplane line. And so that is really tricky for kids as well. So starting with uppercase and just going slowly, there's no need to rush, is going to be much better for them. There are other points in that blog post as well, so I will link it down below so you can check it out if you're interested in learning more about handwriting. One thing I've noticed as a teacher who is sharing about handwriting to parents is that parents sometimes will say, well, I actually don't know how to form the letters correctly. I mean, I know how to make an A, but maybe I'm not making it the way a teacher is teaching how to make an A. What can I do then? And I totally get that because as adults, we have figured out how we like to form the letters, and it's not always the way that teachers teach kids how to form letters, and that's okay. So I actually recorded videos of myself writing all of the uppercase letters, all of the lowercase letters, and all of the numbers, because a lot of people will forget to practice number writing. And I cannot tell you how many number reversals I see, especially in kindergarten. And so practicing the numbers is another important component of practicing handwriting. So I'm going to link all of those videos down below so you can check out the uppercase letter video, the lowercase letter video, and the numbers video. So you can see how to correctly form each letter so you can help your child and teach them and use the same language that I'm using, because that's what they're going to hear in school most likely, because this is how teachers like to teach handwriting. Now there's one more topic that always comes up whenever I discuss handwriting online, and that is name writing. When people are talking with me about how to teach their child to write their name, the question always comes up: should I teach my child to write their name in all uppercase letters, or should I teach my child the first letter is uppercase and the rest should be lowercase? Here's my opinion, and you can agree or disagree, that is totally fine. But I base my opinion on the recommendations of occupational therapists. Since the uppercase letters are easier for kids to form, and because they have less sophisticated pencil strokes, those are the letters that I recommend starting with, even your child's name. Now, I know some kindergarten teachers will disagree with me and say they don't want kids to ever write their name in all uppercase letters because it's a hard habit to break. And I understand where they're coming from, but I want them and you to consider this perspective. Instead of thinking of it as a hard habit to break, maybe we think of it just as a progression of learning and a progression of skills. Just like a child crawls before they walk, or they use training wheels or a strider bike before they're using a regular two-wheel bike with pedals, there's this progression of change and of developing skills. So when a child is very confident and comfortable with their uppercase letters and they can write their name using correct pencil strokes with uppercase letters, it's easier to transition them to lowercase letters. I know it doesn't seem like that, but the reason it's easier is because they've already had some handwriting instruction. They already understand how to form letters, and so it's easier to get them to now learn the lowercase letters. I really think it's important that kids learn their uppercase letters first so that it helps them when they're ready to learn their lowercase letters, because they've already had this instruction. So my opinion is that yes, you would start their name with all uppercase letters, and then when they're ready, you're going to transition them and explain to them that now we're going to write it with just the first letter uppercase and the rest lowercase. And honestly, it doesn't bother me if it takes a while for my kindergartners to transition to writing it with lowercase letters, as long as those uppercase letters are formed correctly. If they're not forming their uppercase letters correctly, then that's a problem. But if they can form them correctly based on the correct pencil strokes, I would much rather see them do that than have them form lowercase letters drawing the letters and not having correct pencil strokes, because that's often what we see. Students who haven't been instructed in lowercase letters but are expected to write their letters lowercase, they are drawing the letters. The letters look like what that letter is supposed to look like, but they're not formed correctly. And you can tell, especially as a teacher, we can tell when an A is just a circle with a line added, or when a G is a circle with a tail added. We know that it wasn't formed correctly, and we don't want that, because that is a much harder habit to break. When kids form their letters incorrectly and then we try to get them to start forming them more correctly, that can be tricky. So my opinion for names, start with uppercase and then transition to lowercase, just like you would with all of the letters. If you do want your child to practice their name, I have a resource for you. I have these editable name printable pages. There's one for each month of the year. And what you can do is you can go in and type your child's name either in all uppercase or just the first letter uppercase and the rest lowercase. And then there is a traceable section, so you can type your child's name there, have them trace their name, and then you can work on having them build their names with letter tiles, and then of course having them practice writing their name. You can also, if you would rather, use something like a yellow highlighter for the tracing section. I've seen that recommended by occupational therapists so that your child can see their name. Again, maybe they're ready for just the first letter capital and the rest lowercase. And then you could write with a highlighter so that they could trace it and they can build it, and then they can practice writing it themselves. So I will leave the link down below. So again, these are editable. There is one for each month of the year, and you can have your child practice. If you don't want them to write on the actual paper, you can put these in a clear plastic sheet protector and then have them use a dry erase marker so then they can reuse it over and over for the month. But these are super helpful to help your child practice writing their name. Are you ready for your homework? It's so important that you're actually taking the time to implement these steps of the 5 steps for reading success and this bonus step of handwriting. Otherwise, just knowing this information is not going to help your child improve their reading skills. You want to make sure that you are putting these steps into action, you're taking action on them so that your child can become a stronger reader and in this case, a better writer. So your homework for this step, I would love for you to have your child practice writing their name. And I don't know how that will look for your child. Either that's going to be all uppercase letters if they are just learning how to write their letters, or if they are further along in their writing development, that might be the first letter uppercase and the rest lowercase. You are welcome to use something like my name writing pages to practice, or you could just practice on paper or a whiteboard. It's also really fun to practice in a multisensory way, like putting sprinkles in a tray and having them practice writing their name in the tray with their finger. You could also do that with dried rice or magic sand to make it more multisensory. But your goal is to help your child learn how to write their name using correct letter formation. So if that's uppercase or lowercase, that is up to you, but you want to make sure that they are forming their letters correctly. If you practice every day, they are going to continue to get better and better. And something like writing their name becomes so muscle memory for them, it becomes so rote that if they learn it incorrectly, it's very hard to break that habit. So make sure you're taking the time to teach them how to write their name correctly, making sure they have the correct pencil strokes, and then practice it every day this week. I hope this information was helpful for you. If you haven't yet, make sure you download this freebie, the 5 Steps for Reading Success. It gives you the overview of the steps, but it also gives you a page for each step, including this bonus step of handwriting that tells you more about that step and also how you can practice it at home with your little one. It also links to freebies and to other resources and videos that will help you learn more about this topic. So if you haven't yet, make sure you grab your copy. And if you have any questions about this or anything else I share on my channel, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can comment down below, or you can find me on my website, littleslovelearning.com. I'm also very active on social media, so you can look me up on Instagram or Facebook at Littles Love Learning Blog, and I will be sure to get back to you. I want to make sure that I am a resource for you and a support for you on this journey of teaching your child to read. And so if you have any questions or need support, please reach out. That is what I'm here for. I love my job. I love to help parents who can then help their kids learn to read at home. Until next time, happy learning. Bye.